Coogs House. The Houston Cougars looking to down the horns on Big Monday. It's the lone Big 12 game Monday night. They're already in Austin, but what's it going to look like?
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, the daily podcast all about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach, Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. If you're a U of H fan or just a hater kind of stop by, and I got a feeling there are a few of those today, please be sure to subscribe down below. That way you can listen to Cougs in your newsfeed each and every day. We appreciate you making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. If it's where you found us, it is so good to see you again. Remember to subscribe. That way you get to 2,000. That's the next big 250 mark. We're doing a giveaway every 250 subscribers. Next one is 2,000 again. So make sure you subscribe and help us get there. We're so close. Hit subscribe. Help us get there. If you don't want to say after this video to like and comment to enter that contest, tell us in the comments down below who you got in the Super Bowl, Chiefs or I'll say Chiefs or Ravens. Well, Chiefs or Niners. All right, so today's episode, we got a couple of different things to look at here. It's the second episode of the day, so thank you for making your way over to the second episode for watching both. We are going to look some at this matchup with the Texas Longhorns. First, kind of look at how the University of Texas got to the spot that they're in on this basketball season. Second, I'll look at the matchups in this game because I think there's some intriguing ones, frankly, as a Coug, and I'm sure that the Burnt Orange folks are thinking there's some for them as well. And the last but not least, I want to make some predictions on this game. I think that this is an intriguing matchup and a chance to steal a road win. Spoiler alert, I think this is a chance to steal a road win, but we'll talk more about that as we get there. So horns down is the way we open up this segment about how things have gone thus far, because it feels like things are sliding in Austin. And moreover, it feels like there's a lot of targets on their backs of sorts in Austin. Now, obviously, part of that is just like in football season, Texas is leaving to join the SEC at the end of the year. They kind of made a big deal about getting out, and frankly, like, people thought the conference might end when they got out, and we're like, no, we're still here. We're going to pull in some other folks. We'll be all right. Suffice it to say that there's been no love lost, and people watching Texas have a more difficult than anticipated basketball season, to say the least. I don't think there was any love lost when the people watched them lose to Washington either in football. But specifically the last 2 weeks, there's been a lot of talk about Rodney Terry and his reaction after the Central Florida game to the Horns going down, specifically after Central Florida beat Texas in Austin. Some players to the student section before jumping the handshake line were seen from Central Florida, I guess, putting the Horns down, right? Long way of putting it down, right? Oh, man, woe was me, putting the Horns down. Apparently, that was really offensive to one Rodney Terry. He called it classless. He also used some four-letter words in that. And I've been on record, but I'll say it one more time. It's interesting to me that a school that has, the history of the song, The Eyes of Texas, and the history that song comes with is going to be offended by someone doing the Horns down. I will also add to that tangentially that if you think that is so offensive, the Horns down part, that is, and you are so offended by that, you probably should have won, first of all, and they wouldn't be doing it if you just beat them. And second of all, as a coach, you don't talk to the other team's players. Full stop. Shouldn't have done it. He shouldn't have talked to those players. He should have gone and talked to his own team, or he should have talked to the other. Hey, those guys are doing something I don't approve, right? Talking to the team's kids, never going to be okay. It's just not. Okay, got that on my system. Now, I will say that amidst distractions are like that, it's been interesting to watch them have this slide. Central Florida is kind of in the middle of what's been a rough stretch of Big 12 play for them. I should point out that Texas was ranked at one point as high as 12th in the AP poll this season, but subsequently lost to Texas Tech, West Virginia, and Central Florida. Yes, those are three teams that Houston has beaten, and two of those three losses for Texas were at home. Then I would add in they also lost at BYU as of Saturday. Texas has been unranked the last couple of weeks because of those mounting losses. They did have a pair of impressive wins in there, and they do have some talent. So I don't want to act like this is a bunch of scrubs falling apart or anything like that. I felt like they played Connecticut relatively closely and competitively early in the season. I want to say like before Thanksgiving, early in the season. Not so competitively with Marquette. Shaka Smart got his revenge in that one for them. They did beat Cincinnati in conference play. They beat LSU the same showcase thing where Texas played A&M. The earlier game in that, Texas beat LSU. And then more recently, they beat Baylor and Oklahoma in the same week. Same set of 4 or 5 days, winning on the road against Oklahoma. Oklahoma at the time was like a top 10 team. I think Baylor might have been as well in the same realm. And they beat Baylor by 2, but they beat Oklahoma by 15 on the road. And so I say like they have talent. And recently they made a lineup adjustment that we'll talk some about in the matchup segment. But I think it changes the philosophy. And well, I think Houston is the better basketball team. Full stop. I do also think that as you've seen the shift in basketball team from Texas, you're seeing them kind of adjust to it some and trying to figure some stuff out. Now, spoils my point when they then go on the road and blow one to BYU. And before I hear from Orange Cow fans that the idea that that BYU is a tough place to play, like Houston just won there, and so I understand that it's a tough place to play, but they could have won that game. They ended up losing by 10. It was close at halftime on Saturday, and they ended up losing by 10. I look at Texas team that the last dozen years minus this year of Texas football, and Texas basketball, I guess, that has talent to be really good and is still finding ways to put it together and may ultimately not find a way to put it together. And they've got 3 incredibly well. They shoot the 3 incredibly well, I should say, and they got 3 guys that can all do it, top 25 in the nation 3-point percentage. But then they are in the bottom third of the country in 3-point attempts, which is a little weird to me. Now, those attempts have gone up some in the last couple of weeks, but it's still interesting to see they've got this weapon they don't seem to use as much as they should. They give up a lot of points, and while the 3-point attempts have gone up for them the last couple of weeks, trying to adjust their offense, they've been giving up more points the last several weeks as well. They're averaging 68 points allowed. When you throw in the Pat season, stuff like that, they've got at the start of the season, they really have given up a lot of points in the more recent games against talented teams. They gave up 84 to BYU, and they beat Baylor, but gave up 73 to Baylor in Austin, 77 to Central Florida in Austin, 76 to West Virginia, 73 to Cincinnati, and 78 to Texas Tech, also in Austin. So they give up a lot of points in college basketball, certainly a lot more than we're used to seeing in Houston games, at least on the defensive side of Houston games. And so it feels like there are some opportunities for Houston to score. I watched a handful of games in this one to get ready for this. I did a little double duty when I watched them play Oklahoma because I want to get ready for the Oklahoma game later this year. Now, I think they've changed some things since that might not have been worthwhile watching, but still interesting to see. And then watch them play against BYU and Texas Tech because BYU was on Saturday and fairly recently, and Texas Tech, Pop Isaac went off. And I will say it felt like BYU, the adjustment they made against BYU was they covered 3-point shooters because BYU can really shoot it. We saw that up close and personal. But that opened up a lot of lanes for BYU to get into the paint and things like that. And my ultimate diagnosis is if that was the only game you watched for Texas play, because I know a lot of people on Houston sports Twitter were talking about that one over the weekend. If that's the only game you've watched them play, it looks like to me Texas has trouble just covering both the inside and the outside. They're going to sell it to cover the outside. They get beat on the inside. They're going to sell it to cover the inside. They beat over the top shooting from the outside. And that back and forth has kind of plagued them in the games I've watched. Now, I will say that as we go through these matchups, there are talented guys there that can give Houston problems. But Houston at times has felt kind of like a well-oiled machine. And if you've got a well-oiled machine that you want to make sure you're taking care of, you got to go to eBay Motors to get it done because passion, drive, and patience are what brings home the winning trophy, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need and the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusive by eBay Guarantee Fit is not available. It's only available to U.S. customers. All right, so as I go through the roster, I want to mention there's a couple names on this that you'll remember because Houston saw them as recently as last year. A couple different transfers into UT Austin were guys that Houston saw last year at various points. Max Abmas will lead the way. He's transferred from Oral Roberts. Now, I will say he's playing very well this year. He's a high scorer. He's a legendary scorer in like the college basketball history books. Houston did hold him to 3 points and 4 assists, 3 turnovers last year. I would point out that Marcus Sasser guarded him and the length drove him a little crazy. But Houston's seen him before. Same thing with Caden Shedrick, who played at Virginia last year. He led them in points in the Houston-Virginia game for what it's worth last year. 16 points and 3 rebounds in that matchup. Ethiel Horton played at Central Florida. He had 14 points in one game against Houston and 18 points in the other. He had 14 when it was in Houston and 18 when it was in Florida. And I will point out that he was kind of the secondary threat in a lot of what they were doing because Houston was so worried about Taylor Hendricks. Now he's just shut down Taylor Hendricks for parts of each of those games, but obviously Horton got his in the aftermath. Now I'm looking at their starting lineup from Texas in these matchups in the last handful of games, and they made a shift sometime in the last handful of games to go from playing Dylan Mitchell as a 3 and Dylan Disu as a 4 with Shedrick as a 5 and a big lineup to going Dylan Mitchell as a 4, Dylan Disu as a 5, and a third guard on the floor for smaller lineups. It's given them some good things, taking some things away. I think Houston can still find ways to take advantage. But starting off with the point guard, head of the snake, leader of the pack kind of guy, Max Abmas. Again, Houston saw him last year at Oral Roberts. Houston used Marcus Sasser, shut him down. This year, I think he's going to get the Jamal Shead matchup. Now, he's their high points man at 17.6 points per game, also getting 4.3 assists. He's a 40% three-point shooter. He's jacking up nearly 8 of them per game, so that's high percentage and high volume, even in the parts of the year where they were not shooting particularly high volume. He was getting his shots up. I think Jamal covers him. I think the main thing is that he may not have the length that Marcus had to cover him last year and drive him crazy, but Jamal Shead has the speed, the tenacity, and frankly, it's the point guard matchup. It's the if you cut down this guy, you cut down their offense kind of matchup. I think it's got to be Jamal on this year's team. I would love to have Marcus back too, obviously, but I think it's got to be Jamal on this year's team. Now, that matchup is fun and interesting because neither one's given a whole lot of size. I do think Jamal is a much better athlete, but neither one's given a whole lot of size. And it's a great college basketball point guard matchup. Both guys, frankly, lead their teams different ways, but both guys are very much the leader of their teams. The other guard spot, Tyrese Hunter, he's listed at 6 foot. He's getting about 12 points per game. He's shooting 35% from 3, but he's one of those guys shooting on the lower side of attempts for them. I think he gets the LJ Cryer matchup because of their other 2 guards that are not Max Abmas. He's the one that I think matches up from more of a size perspective that will not give Cryer difficulty in the size, like, backing him down and using his shoulders and all that kind of stuff. Tyrese Hunter's about 6 feet tall. Cryer's listed about 6'1", 6'2", depending on which guys you're reading. If you told me it was 6'2" and change, I'd believe you, but I digress. I think that's the natural matchup with the 2-guard spot. That means Ethiel Horton, the Central Florida cat, he's listed at 6'3". If you told me he was 6'4", I'd believe you. I think that's the natural Emanuel Sharp matchup. He's only getting 7.2 points per game this year, but we saw last year he can score when given the opportunity to. And last year when Houston played Central Florida, he got a lot of his points when Houston was worried about other guys. It'd be really easy to have that happen again this year, so you can't let that happen. He shoots the ball exceptionally well from 3 this year, and he's a guy that's seeing his attempts climb in the last handful of games as far as where he's finding form. He shoots kind of well in the slot areas, both free throw line extended kind of areas of the floor. So I imagine Sharp gets him from a size perspective, but also, frankly, similar kinds of roles on the 2 teams. Right? If anyone should be able to pick that up, it should be him. The power forward spot that's been kind of the shift for them has been Dylan Mitchell. Mitchell is getting over 10 points per game. He's a really fluid athlete. They started the year with him trying to play the small forward wing perimeter spot. Handled the ball really well. Really explosive, long strides, kind of got some wiggle to him, and have a little swag to his game. There was a real chance he was going to be a pro last year, and he ended up staying. People were worried that he was either going to be a pro or transfer in Austin, and he ended up staying. The big thing that's interesting to me is, and one of the reasons I think they moved him to the power forward spot and shifting things around is he's not really a 3-point shooting threat. He's a perimeter forward in every other sense of the phrase. Like, he is a true perimeter bound forward. He's athletic, and like I said, he's wiggly and explosive, and he passes the ball pretty well, and he handles the ball pretty well, and he can guard on the perimeter. He's not a shooting threat. And I think that's ultimately why he came back to school, and frankly, why he probably had to go back to Texas. And I think that means he's the J'Wan Roberts matchup, because J'Wan can kind of sag off him a little bit so he doesn't give up so much in the first step, even though his knee's a little banged up. And everything else, all those other outside actions that he'll be involved in, Dylan Mitchell will be involved in, I want J'Wan involved in, as far as like the pinching on the different screens and those kinds of things. I think that's the matchup for sure. I'm taking J'Wan, both from a veteran leadership and frankly an execution perspective. Mitchell's kind of got some high variance, some really, really nice plays, some really, really not so nice plays. I'm taking steady-handed as J'Wan, on top of the fact that when they get to the post play, I mean, he's got to cover J'Wan too, right? And that's when I think J'Wan's going to beat him down a little bit. We'll talk more about it in the final segment. But then Dylan Disu is the guy that I think could be a real pro from this Texas team. He's listed at 6'9" and change. They start off the year with him playing the power forward spot. He's getting 15.5 points per game, 4.5 rebounds per game. He's shooting threes this year. He's shooting nearly three of them per game, and he's shooting 56% from behind the arc this year. He looks like the kind of guy that might be playing center in college, but could be a stretch four at the next level. I think Houston will play Javier Francis on him because he's got so much size to him as well. He's listed at 6'9", got long arms, got some broad shoulders, and he does shoot those three threes per game and makes about half of them, just over half of them actually. And that, I guess you could say, is a reason to put J'Wan Roberts on him. I think it's Javier Francis because of the size. And frankly, we saw Francis play so on the perimeter against BYU, so on the perimeter against Iowa State. I actually kind of think that this is a chance for him to show off what he can do out there. Disu is not a great like ball handler. He's not like shifty and wiggly in those kinds of sense. He's a good athlete. He's explosive in a straight line kind of way. Don't get me wrong. But I think that the lack of wiggle there, for like, I keep using that word over and over again, shiftiness or whatever, changing gears. I think that means Francis can cover him out there. I'm not worried about it. And then frankly, I also think it means that you get Francis's length to help disrupt those jump shots and those kinds of things. Now, their bench is, something they've been kind of shifting as well. I mentioned Shedrick used to start for them. He's now gone to the bench. He's a shooting big. He's listed at 6'11". He's a big 6'11". He's coming off the bench for them lately. Brock Cunningham is kind of their do-it-all guy. He's listed at 6'6". He's like if Ramon Walker were 6'6". I will say that Brock shoots 32% from threes. I can't find a shooting chart to confirm this, but if you told me it was like 50% from the corners and like 20% from everywhere else, I'd believe you. He's a great corner three guy, a classic take a charge kind of guy. He's diving on the floor. He's, again, 6'6" Ramon Walker, and a lot. And frankly, Kelvin Sampson has spoken highly of him in the times we've heard him talk about Texas getting ready for this matchup. Fun fact, actually. So, I coach high school basketball. I'm an assistant coach. Brock Cunningham was an underclassman on the same high school basketball team at the time that had Jarrett Allen, the now Cleveland Cavalier NBA All-Star, on it. Back when I was coaching, we coached against those guys state playoffs, and they beat us on their way to one of their state championships that Jarrett Allen's teams won. Brock would later transfer high schools, but I say to say that in that gym, Kelvin Sampson was there, I think, recruiting Jarrett Allen in that playoff game. We were playing the game in Houston. I don't know that. I don't know who Kelvin was there to watch, but Jarrett was the clear and obvious pro on the floor. And frankly, kind of a nerdy, quirky one at that. And both Jarrett and Brock, I would say, are very much Kelvin Sampson type of basketball player. So I could see how he would have been in the gym recruiting either one of those guys, but I think at the time was Jarrett. Jarrett kicked our tail. We lost a close game, but Jarrett did whatever he wanted in that game, I will say. Brock was there too. Weird to say now that Jarrett is a multi-time All-Star or whatever, and Brock is still in college. He's like a 60-year guy, right? The other guard they bring off the bench, though, and this has been kind of a late development as well, because when they started playing Horton and Hunter both in the starting lineup, that meant there were less guards pull off the bench. Shindale Weaver, only guard with any real minutes. He's 6'3", transferred from UT Arlington. He's not a great three-point shooter, but he's really, really explosive, really, really good at getting to the line, and frankly, wants to make Sports Center kind of plays once he gets to the line, once he gets to the lane. He wants to make putback dunks. He wants to go up and go through contact, make and one dipsy do layups. He is a sports center highlight seeking kind of guy at 6'3". But he's really more of a lane threat than a shooting threat. If he were a shooting threat, I think he'd start, frankly. But he's not, and he doesn't. Good, talented kid. I will say JoJo, Damian, even Malik. Houston has the depth to play with these guys in a depth kind of thing. Their depth is talented, and I think Houston's is too. I think the interesting thing for both teams, there's not a whole lot of drop off. I just think Houston's across the board is more talented. Not a whole lot of drop off from starters to subs is what I would point out here. Now, I want to get to some predictions and how this game's going to go in the third and final segment, because I think it's going to be an interesting game on Monday night. But first, that's certainly not the only game on people's minds these days, because right now we've just wrapped up the Championship Sunday that is in the NFL, and it's happy Super Bowl time of year to anyone who celebrates. Like if you're from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, and if you're like me, Super Bowl is a fun time of year. I'm really, really weird about the Super Bowl. I want to eat all the Super Bowl food, the wings, the pizzas, the pops, etc., all in my house. I want no one to talk to me. I don't want to miss any commercials. I don't want to miss any game. I want to have the food. I want to have the full experience uninterrupted, and that generally means I'm not around a whole heck of a lot of people, which is, I think, a little bit different. Tell me in the comments down below, how do you like your Super Bowl? Now, this year's Super Bowl, we have the Chiefs and the Niners, a rematch of the 2020 Super Bowl. The Chiefs are 1.5-point dogs. That feels ridiculous to me. Like Patrick Mahomes feels like Michael Jordan. We're making him a dog. That seems simple. That seems easy. It seems so easy to do it at FanDuel, because right now, join today and you get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Put $5 down. That thing wins. Boom, $200 in bonus bets. If it's FanDuel.com/locked-on, sign up. That's FanDuel.com/locked-on. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook of the NFL. All right, now I mentioned that the predictions of this are going to be interesting because I think it's going to be a weird game. It's Big Monday, late Monday night. Both teams played on Saturday. Houston played at home on Saturday and then drove over to Austin on Sunday. UT Austin played in Provo on Saturday and flew back home, I should say, late at night, I should say, and then ultimately, both teams got to practice someone on Sunday, and now they have a full day Monday to get ready to play Monday night. The Monday night late game was interesting because it's a late game considering both teams played early in the day on Sunday to kind of readjust how your body and routine go, but it also allows for a lot of recovery time. Now, in getting ready to watch this game, I prepared by watching Texas play BYU, Texas Tech, and Oklahoma. Now, BYU got away from them in the second half. It was a close game at halftime, and BYU's offense just proved too much for Texas. They couldn't figure out what to stop. BYU spread them out. They come out and cover them. They dump it inside. They cover up the inside. BYU shot over the top, right? Against Oklahoma, Texas kind of did the getting away from in the second half. Oklahoma was keeping at home, and the crowd was crazy, and so on and so forth. And ultimately, Texas got hot shooting the ball in the second half. And you have to prepare, frankly, if you're getting ready after watching that game, like they might shoot like that at home against Houston because teams shoot well at home. Role players shoot well at home. What's going to look like when the guys I'm talking about that aren't typical shooters go 1 for 2 from 3? How does that shift the game, right? To get ready for those kinds of things. Watching them play against Tech was interesting because at home, they allowed Pop Isaac to become kind of a villain, right? He got hot. He got hot at the right time in the second half, went nuts. He had 21 points. They had 3 other guys also get 10 or more points. And it was interesting that in that game, they looked like they were trying to play the small lineup that they've gone with more recently. And ultimately, Texas Tech's big man, Washington, kind of forced them to play more of a 3 big lineup with Caden Shedrick and Dylan Disu and Dylan Mitchell on the floor at the same time. And that led to Pops Isaac going crazy from behind the arc. And all of those things, I think, tied together in each of these, that Texas has had trouble, right, doing both things, closing out on threes and defending the rim. They've got to pick one. And so to win this game, Houston's going to have to demonstrate that they can do both. Houston's going to have to shoot the ball well from behind the arc and showed they can attack the rim with a guy like Roberts, with a guy like Shead getting downhill. Right now, I know they can do that, but they've got to do that to put Houston or to put Tech. Houston's got to do that to put Texas in this bind, right? They got to put them in this bind where they have to make a decision and live with the other, and Houston can poison them with whichever one they don't pick. Now, I think starting both Sharp and Cryer, Emanuel Sharp and LJ Cryer, should spread them out. It should pull them out. And if I were getting ready to coach against Houston, I would imagine that means that they're running whatever coverage Texas runs, where they are giving up a lot of paint touches. However, Houston also using two more traditional bigs, both J1 and JVR, kind of implies to me that lane will be clogged up some, right? I don't know which of those guys, Dylan Mitchell or Disu, will get the J1 matchup or the JVR matchup. I imagine it's Mitchell gets J1 and JVR gets Dylan Disu, but I don't know that. I imagine if they go to Mitchell on J1, that Houston's feeding the post pretty early and trying to see if they can get him in foul trouble so they can attack him a little bit, et cetera. Because while I think Mitchell and Disu can play well together, I don't know that Shedrick and Disu can play well as the two posts on the floor without. Anyway, that's not here there. I'd also be interested to see, though, this is a long way to get to this, because the way Houston can dictate lineups with their own four-guard lineups, and because of the way Texas has had so much trouble covering teams that can hit you inside and outside, I wonder if you'll see a lot of four-guard lineups in this game. You'll see a lot of, Damian Dunn playing the 4 spot, Malik Wilson playing the 4 spot, JoJo Tugler at the 5 spot, right? Like, and maybe pull J1 out playing some offense along the perimeter. We've seen him do that a couple different times in Big 12 play. I wonder if Houston's using those things to kind of get ready for this matchup and kind of get ready to use those out of their back pocket. Ramon Walker maybe even get some minutes out there and along the perimeter. And I say all that to say that as I look at this, I think there's a number of different ways Houston has a path to victory. But Texas is talented. Again, we said it at the top of the show. They're a talented team that I would argue is underachieving thus far this year. They're more worried about the horns down logos and stuff like that than they are pretty much anything else, right? So I think Houston wins this game by like 8-10. It's on the road, so 8 makes me feel like they can win by a lot more than that at home. Houston's going to have to shoot the ball well, and frankly, going to make sure that they cover up Texas's shooters. Now, I think this is going to be a lower scoring game than Texas has been playing lately. I could see this being like 65-57 Houston's way. So that's what I'm going to go with as my official prediction. That said, I can see it going a number of different ways. I will say if one team gets boat raced in this game, I only see it being Houston doing the boat racing. I don't see Houston getting boat raced in this game by any stretch, which, of course, knock on wood, means that, I'm going to be crazy. But that's what I see happening in this one. And I see it happening on Monday night. Now, whatever happens, we'll be talking about it after the fact and sound way more smarter because way more smart. You get that because it'll have just happened. So make sure you subscribe to get Locked On Coogs in your newsfeed each and every day. And we'll be back tomorrow morning to break it down. If you're looking for more stuff in the Coogs right now, make sure you go check out the breakdown of the big win they had on Saturday that I did in the other episode of Locked On Coogs out right now as well. So make sure you go hit subscribe, hit the bell for notifications so you know if we go live, and make sure you make us your first listen each and every day. We appreciate you so much for doing that. Locked On Coogs is a proud Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Coogs.